All right, here we go. OverDrive off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, up on TSN Plus. Bryan Hayes, Jamie Noodles McLennan, Dave Feschuk of the Toronto Star in here. The trade deadline is now, what are we, an hour past the deadline? And there's still news coming in.
35 trades after that.
Every single year it goes like this.
Okay, so I do know this because I've gotten heck from the league before because we're critical of it. And they're like, there's a queue.
Right.
So everyone's in the queue. But my argument was, do you go into the queue going, we've got a trade, and you work out the framework while you're in the queue?
Right.
Because that could be like, hey, a team right at the deadline goes, we got to get a trade done. We're working with this team, us in New Jersey. We're in the queue. We're the 100th call. You got an hour and a half to work it out. Like, I don't know, or do you have to submit that trade that you're working on?
How about we open up a couple more queues?
Yeah.
It's like going to the grocery store and there's 45 people and one person's running the till. You're like, how about we get some other people up here?
A few more people on the check-in.
Yeah, there's ways to, you don't have to fax stuff in anymore. Like, there's ways for us to do this.
Was it Chicago that got jammed up by a fax?
They did. And the Maple Leafs famously did at one point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there was a famous.
That one I'm not aware. But the Chicago one was significant because those were offers that you needed to.
It was a qualifying thing
offer
with like Andrew Ladd and Bufflin Versteeg. Yeah, it was something like that. It was that era after the first cup. A
jammed fax machine or something. Is that insane? That wasn't that long ago.
Not that long ago, where you have people that played in the National Hockey League, like have their grade 10, and they're like, how does this fax machine work here?
Upside down, putting it in so they can't read it.
Did we get it in properly?
But this queue, it is frustrating because all of a sudden, you're right, it's 4:02. We're going to hear about trades probably right till 5 or 6 o'clock.
Well, let's begin with the Maple Leafs here and the deals that we know have happened. So Scott Laughton was acquired by the Leafs earlier this afternoon from Philly, and they gave up a 2027 first-round pick that is top 10 protected. So it's top 10 protected. If it ends up in the top 10, it'll roll over. We don't know all of the details on that. I'll try to find those out throughout the afternoon. But they also threw in Nikita Grabenkin. I don't know if Grabenkin had a future. He's a big personality. They might like him in Philly the way that he plays.
Well, you guys know. Remember, I got in trouble because I called him the Hawk Tua of this market, and people went nuts on me.
Yeah, it was a flash in the pan in retrospect for Grabenkin. But
and I don't know how much hate I took.
Because he gave the great interviews outside of the rink, right, Dave?
Back check, forecheck, paycheck,
and he's got no teeth, and everyone loves that.
I wish him all the best and all of that, but you're trying. If you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, you're building for today. You're not building for a 21-year-old Russian to, So you wish him all the best, but. When I saw his name come across, I'm like, oh, well, there
goes your boy Grabenkin.
There goes my guy.
Scott Laughton is coming in at 50% retained salary as well, which is pretty significant. So they're paying him like just over $1.5 million for this year and next.
Great value.
Really good value for a 30-year-old who is a third-line center, right? Yeah. Where if you got Brock Nelson, you could argue that's a second-line center. If you got Braden Shen, maybe he could play second line. For me, Scott Laughton, that's the ceiling.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Right? Like, it's still, if Tavares goes down or Matthews goes down, you're going to move him up, but you're not going to feel overly comfortable about that.
Right.
But I do think he fits in better in that role than Max Domi
100%.
or Pontus Holmberg.
He's a centerman. Like, he's actually a centerman.
He's going to be comfortable in that role.
He's not a guy that's like, oh, I've played wing and I've played center. Like, to me, if you had a wish list, and we had these wish lists and all of that, outside of all the noise, they addressed what they needed. That's at the end of the day, there's some bodies that went out that were, space fillers, humans, we called them.
Yes.
And you know what? But Laughton is a perfect fit. If you wanted a 3C, that's him.
That's your guy. That's your guy.
He's not bringing you the depth scoring that a lot of people thought they could use, obviously. It's a guy he's topped out at 18 goals a couple of years ago, but he's averaging like 10, 15 goals a year throughout his career.
Which is more than what Max Domi is on pace for this year.
That's a good point.
Very good point.
But it's not, it's not exactly Brock Nelson.
No.
Which is a next tier up. But look, he's got some playoff experience, albeit not recently because the Flyers have not been a factor recently, but he's played 24 games in the playoffs. He's produced in the playoffs a little bit. I think he brings like kind of an energy and a kind of forechecking relentlessness that this bottom six really hasn't had a lot of.
Yeah.
And I think they use that.
I think that's valid. I think it'll play well in the marketplace, too. He's an Oakville guy. He's coming home, and, people love that. But I think that on its own, if it was just Scott Laughton, it would be deemed a disappointing day. I think the Leafs needed to do more because of what Florida's done, and we'll get to them in a moment, what Tampa continues to do. But right under the wire, in the queue, the Maple Leafs acquired Brandon Carlo from Boston, which is wild when you think about it. But Carlo's, he's a big right shot defenseman. Leaf fans are very familiar with him because he's been in these playoff rounds over the years.
Yeah.
He's got 2 years left on the deal at $4.1 million. We'll see if there's money retained on that. Ultimately, it's for Fraser Minton and a first rounder in 2026. Right. The Leafs are not going to have a first round pick for the next 3 years of their own. Like those first round picks are gone. And then Pittsburgh got in, I think, to basically find a way to make the deal work.
Yeah.
And Connor Dewar's on his way to Pittsburgh, and Connor Timmins on his way to Pittsburgh. So if you're a Leaf fan, we'll get to what they paid. But as of Saturday night, presuming they can all get there.
Better team today.
Scott Laughton, third line center. Brandon Carlo, probably on your second pair. Absolutely a better team
today.
Absolutely
better
a better
team today. Where, for me, you were looking at it and going, not loving. This guy could work, should. Now you've got defined roles. Like you just said, if you're looking at the centers, Austin, John, and Scott Laughton as your 1, 2, 3 down the middle. And now Carlo gives you some versatility, right? So Tanev will be back. Obviously, he's going to be healthy and be back. But it's another long right shot. I was talking with the grappler out there before we came on, and he's like, "What if Yanni Hakanpää just showed up?" Well, he's still still here, right?
He's still technically around.
But Carlo, with a couple years left, like he's now a Leaf. Like it's not just a rental for the rest of the season. And like this is a 28-year-old defenseman.
28-year-old defenseman.
6'5", and yes, he's not having the best season in Boston. Change of scenery.
Well, and that's the question, because this year, last year you could look at some of his play and it dipped off. This year, to me, feels like just a write-off in Boston.
Yeah, it's
like I think you have to consider that he's still 28, he's on term, it's not a huge price, he's a big body right shot. But what sticks out to me is that these are moves since Brad Treliving has arrived. He has acquired Chris Tanev, Brandon Carlo, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and he signed Jake McCabe to a contract extension. So you throw in Morgan Riley on that, and I'm curious to see what Riley's future will look like after this playoff run. Ideally he stays a Leaf. He's the longest-standing Leaf, but we'll see what happens there. But now you've got Morgan Riley's the highest-paid defenseman on the team at $7.5 million.
Right.
You got him on term. You got Tanev on term. You got McCabe on term, Carlo, and Ekman-Larsson. Like, for this year and the next two afterwards, you have 5 defensemen, all anywhere from the age of 28 to 34, 35. Like all veterans that are respectable, that are responsible, that are big bodies.
Right.
I think that's really significant. That for years it was like, the Leafs can't find
patchwork.
Yeah, or it's small defenseman here, small defenseman there. But Brad Treliving has done here, and we'll see if it works. They still got to play the games. They don't get the Stanley Cup today because they made these moves. But historically speaking, we've been hammering at this for years. Size on defense is basically mandatory in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like more or less mandatory. And Tanev's a big guy. McCabe plays big. Carlo's a big guy. Ekman-Larsson's a big guy. Like they got some size now on defense.
A little bite.
And you can filter different,
looks.
You can find different looks. And I think it was necessary. As much as the third center was something they were going to attack, I think it was mandatory they found someone that could play defense. And they got that in Brandon Carlo.
And I think it does a couple things for me. I think, to your point, you fill out the size, which Treliving essentially stated from day one when he got here. That's what he wanted.
You have to have it.
He wanted big guys on the blue line, and now he's got them. So it does that. It also slots Ekman-Larsson into a more favorable position. Assuming Carlo becomes the second pairing partner of Morgan Riley, in the grand tradition of Lyubushkin coming into town to become Morgan Riley's partner and Luke Schenn coming into town to become Morgan Riley's partner. I mean, it slots Ekman-Larsson into a third pairing role, which is where he thrived last year playing for Florida, right? In the third pairing. And also, maybe it can kind of rejuvenate Morgan Riley.
Well, stabilize him, right? Like that. There's a trickle-down effect for players that come in. And I'll use, for example, the Edmonton Oilers, when they traded for Ekholm. Ekholm had not only effect on Bouchard, but he had effect on Nurse because he took some of the responsibility away.
Right.
So what you're going to find your pairings, you're going to find your comfort. But what you did is add somebody who's not going to be miscast. You didn't add a 6 and say, can you play 4 for us, please? Or, hey, can you take this 5 and play your off wing and in 4? That's where I think it's all natural when you're looking at left, right. And I know Babcock was a big, like, left, right type of guy, but it is natural.
Yeah.
Like, that's to me, you're not asking more from a player where they're out of their comfort zone. Or, hey, you got to punch above your weight for the next 20 games, and, we'll live with that. No, everybody will be slotted properly, if not anything. And if there's an injury, you've got guys who've played in those roles that can go up. And you still have depth in Meyer, Benoit, guys like that, where they're here, they're going to play. And so I think they addressed everything they needed to do. And the crazy thing, and I know drives you nuts, Hayes, is we're all GMs counting the numbers now. Like, where's this? How much are you paying for this and all that? That's the cap era. You just have to make it work. The money worked. Well, they made it work.
But that's it, man. The cap's going to be going up exponentially over the next few years.
Yeah.
And I think you got to build from the net out. They have Stolarz for another year. They have Wall for 3 more. Yeah. You're locked in, not at big money for those two. And again, on defense, now you have Riley, Tanev, McCabe, Carlo, Ekman, Larson. That's 5 defensemen that you have under term, and you have some flexibility, and you're not necessarily overpaying anybody. Right. And Carlo's a big body that even at that price, even if he's on your third pairing, I still think it makes sense. It's you're not paying him $8-9 million a year. And again, we'll wait to see the details. But if there's some salary retainment and you get this guy at 2.5 or $3 million, that is the price of doing business for a third pair.
That's a bonus. Like, that's it. To me, that's gravy. Like because even if you got him at the full rate, he's worth the full rate with something with a 4 in it. But you got him if you get him with something with a 2 in it, it's amazing. Like, there's no downside to that. I know on the other side, people will go first out the door.
Well, they're giving a first rounder and Fraser Minton, right? And we talked about it a lot coming up. Will they give up Easton Cowan? Will they give up Ben Danford? Will it be Minton? Will it be first? Right. Well, it turns out they've given up 2 first-round picks today and Fraser Minton.
Yeah.
So those were 3 of your 5 or 6 pieces that you had to work with. They did it, but if you believe in your team and the way that they've been operating, is Matthews is up, we're signing him. Willie's up, we're going to sign him. Mitch is up, we're going to try to sign him. We'll see what happens there. Like, that's the reporting that they're trying to engage in conversations with him. If you keep saying this is our philosophy and we believe it, then you got to prove it.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, you can't, you got to prove it, and you got to go in. And Tampa's better, Florida's better, Toronto's better. Now you got to get that 1 seed.
I think Ottawa got better.
And Ottawa got better. Ottawa made moves.
And the other really significant storyline here, this being Toronto, is that the Bruins that know are dead.
White flag.
Well, they waved the white flag today.
Yeah.
Which is
they're trying to retool on the fly.
Listen, they've had a hell of a run. Like, I don't think anybody's feeling sorry for them, especially in this market.
Not Leaf fans.
But I think there's people in Boston that were like, okay, you're just limping your way in or whatever. Like, knock
it's the
it off
smart
and move
play
on.
to do this.
It's the right play. And I think it was delayed when Tuukka left, when Chara left, Bergeron and Krejci were leaving, and then they came back.
Yeah.
This might have been 2 years ago, but then they went on that incredible run. Our boy Monty took him.
Yeah.
Monty, who was a great coach. But now it's saying, white flag, let's retool, let's get draft picks, let's get younger players. Good for them. But the teams not named Tampa, Florida, and Toronto, you're looking at Ottawa and Detroit going, good. Like, get out of
Boston
here.
out of
here.
here.
You go. That's
now,
one less team at that bottom.
What I would say is,
careful.
Pasternak's still there.
Exactly.
McAvoy's still there. Swayman's still there.
Yeah.
Right? You still got, like, Elias Lindholm. I don't know what he's going to be in the future. But, you've got Lowry, who I think they like. Like, they got a couple of young players. And what has happened here, you can see it, is Washington has set a tone for a number of teams in the league to try to retool and move on the fly.
Yeah.
If you're not aware, Brad Marchand was traded to the Florida Panthers, which to me was a shocking maneuver. Like that happened right at 3. I'm not surprised they moved on him because I think they had to. Once you determine Charlie Coyle's going, Coyle went to Colorado. Frederick was out. Brazo, they moved on. Like, once you're going to do that, Carlo to Toronto, you might as well go all in. Like, you have to do that. I think it's a smart play in Boston to do this. But the reporting was he's going to a Western Conference team.
Yeah.
And my thought on that was they don't want to see him, burn someone in the East. Like, get him out of here.
Yeah.
And I think they did right by him, though. I think they may have had options from the West, and I wouldn't be surprised if Marchand said, if you're trading me, trade me down there. Because Florida and Tampa, and I think Florida's kind of leapfrogged over Tampa the last 2 years. That's the team.
Yeah.
And now the idea that Marchand's going to return and Kachuk's going to return, and they got Seth Jones. And
on top of the team they already had.
They already have a team that's really chugging right now in Florida. Like, it's not going to be easy to get through that state.
I didn't see what did Florida give up for Marchand?
I still haven't seen
still don't
all
even
the
know.
details.
It's like
again, they're in the queue and it's
parts
still coming.
unknown. Like, that's the biggest thing. Florida has, really in essence become Vegas of the East.
Yep.
And which I'm waiting for something right now at 4:15 for Vegas traded for somebody out of nowhere.
They've been shockingly quiet.
Yeah, they've actually been the quietest. I mean, this Dallas team, this Rantanen thing is fascinating.
Wow.
Like, fascinating.
Yeah, that in and of itself would have been the biggest story of the day.
That's a Netflix special.
Yeah, so Mikko Rantanen, last night it was being reported on pretty significantly. Pierre LeBrun came on our show and he said if he were to guess where he's playing as of tomorrow, it would be Dallas 1, Carolina 2, and then he'd take the field from there. And then it was reported on pretty significantly last night that Dallas had been given the right to negotiate because I guess they had a deal in place.
Yeah.
And it turns out it's Logan Stankoven and 2 first-round picks to Carolina.
Yeah.
And Dallas was the one that was going to determine if they'd pull the trigger or not, if they could get Rantanen to sign. And he takes $12 million a year on an 8-year deal, which is a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I think he probably would have got more in Colorado.
If not the same.
If not the same, why would you put yourself through this?
That's the only thing that's, Dave, I don't know how you feel, but that's the only perplexing thing out of all of this is if you probably sat him down a week from now and said candidly, if you had a do-over, if you could, rewind time for 6 weeks, however long this has happened, would you take $12 million in Colorado and call it a day on an 8-year extension? I think you'd probably say yes. But the trade caught him off guard. He gets to Carolina. He's uncomfortable. Doesn't look settled in, even though his best buddy Aho's there. Probably doesn't fit that system. And then Carolina's going, okay, we need you to sign. Like, we need to get this done. And he's like, I don't know what I want to do. So now Dallas steps in. So in essence, Carolina turned, who was it? Neshcash into Stankoven and 2 firsts.
Necas and Drury.
Necas and Drury into Stankoven and 2 firsts.
Yeah. It's such an amateur play by Carolina. Like, what my read on this, and this is my opinion, I don't have insight, is Colorado played Carolina like a fiddle. And what I would guess happened was Colorado started calling around saying, you got to be quiet. I can't have my boy find out that he could be flipped here. And Carolina was like, well, I don't know if he'll stay with us. And they're like, well, we don't want to talk to him, so do you want to do the deal or not? And the GM down in Carolina said, all right, I'll take the deal. Because you'll notice Jim Nill in Dallas was like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not making a deal with this guy until I know he's going to sign.
Exactly.
And he put the pressure on Rantanen. And what I wonder is, in retrospect, if Carolina had the opportunity to do that, would he have already signed an 8-year deal with Carolina?
Right.
Like, in other words, in 6 weeks, if they had the right to negotiate, would Rantanen been like, all right, let's talk. Like, what are we going to do? Instead of getting flipped, being heartbroken, getting to Carolina, being like, I don't know about it here, and then having time to think.
But the thing that bothers me, if I'm an Avalanche fan, is, like, where was the communication between the Avalanche and the Rantanen camp if he was willing to take 8x12?
I'm not sure he was, though, Dave.
At that point?
My guess would be Rantanen was like, I want 13 and a half, 14, and he realized that's not how the league sees me.
Right.
And Colorado is actually accurate in their assessment because maybe Carolina was willing to go to 12 and a half or something. Dallas was like 12, take it or leave it.
Well,
and he took it.
And they could play the tax-free card.
Of
too.
course,
right.
which is a benefit, but
Does
still.
help. Yeah, it's still a number.
At the end of the day, Rantanen in Colorado was saying, I want this or I want that. And then 6 weeks later, it's like, you can get this. Take it or leave it.
Well, he was, to defend him, he did say he was willing to take less to stay in Colorado.
But that's arbitrary. What does that mean?
Yeah, he didn't get to
Less-
a number.
Yeah.
But the point is, like, this is a guy, if he was worried about the money, he had unrestricted free agency at his disposal in a few months. So I don't understand.
There is still something.
I don't understand the sequence of events here. You know?
Although what I would say is if you're Colorado, I love Rantanen. He's a great player. But they went and got Brock Nelson and Charlie Coyle today. And
fair.
Nate Chess has been great for them.
He's been really good.
Like, they're a better team.
That's the thing. Rantanen, for those three players, I think you could argue the other three with the depth, they're actually a better team than when they had them 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's possible. Look, he's been a clutch playoff dude.
He's a great
won
player.
a cup, so
He's
let's
a
not
great
forget
player.
that.
For sure.
Here's a team that won the cup, when? 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Colorado? Don't like the goaltending? 2. Gone. Like, both of you. Gone. Get the hell out of here. We'll bring in Blackwood. And to me, that was significant. Then you're like, they're seeing something with Rantanen, but I know it was leaked a little bit. I don't want to confirm or deny it.
Oh, look at you! All right,
Makar's got a big number coming around the corner.
Of course, yeah.
So you're looking at that. So you're going, okay,
2 years down the road, you're paying him.
You're paying him $18 million or what it's ever going to be, right?
Well,
so
yeah, the way it was put to me was these guys looked at their roster and said, "We don't want to be the Leafs. We can't just have. We don't want to be as top heavy as the Maple Leafs. We can't have McKinnon making this, and McCarr's going to make more than McKinnon by some
Rantanen.
measure.
Absolutely.
And if we got Rantanen at a huge number, and then it gets ugly fast.
Yeah.
Right now, to your point, they've essentially swapped 3 for 1.
Yeah,
You've got 3 guys come in to take the place of.
But think of this
and
team.
Nichushkin's back now.
I was just going to say, Nichushkin's back too. Like, they're a team that's massive turnover for a team that's won. Like, you can understand if guys leave for free agency and stuff, but this is big turnover.
Well, on top of it, when they flipped Rantanen, imagine you told McFarland and Sakic, by the way, Rantanen will be in Dallas in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Their head would have popped off.
That's
because they were thinking, we'll trade it, but you're going out east.
See in Carolina.
Yeah, as far east
See
as
in
you
the
can
final
get.
meeting.
Exactly. If we meet in the finals, bygones will be bygones. 6 weeks later, this guy's in Dallas.
Yeah.
They might play in the first
it looks
round.
like, and I think they will play in the first round.
Well,
because we were talking about it yesterday. I think Colorado with these moves, they're going to chuck. If they leapfrog Minnesota, now you're looking at Winnipeg.
Well, Winnipeg's got to hold on.
You're right.
Like Winnipeg, they picked up Luke Schenn and Brandon Tanev.
They just
they tinkered.
bit pieces, as I would call it.
Bit
right?
pieces.
Well, both those guys will look good in Leaf uniforms.
Yeah, Tanev's going to be on the fourth line there, though.
Yeah,
in my
he's a good
opinion.
player.
But rightfully so.
I understand that. But
Rightfully so.
Yes.
Like, if you've got that much depth and you can put a Brandon Tanev on the fourth line, you're a deep team.
Yeah.
To me,
they're a good team.
And Luke Schenn, Carlo almost beat me up. Carlo Koliakovo.
That's his boy, Luke Schenn.
I was like, Schenn can't really skate that way. He goes, what are you talking? Like, we're in the green room. I'm like, you traded for a 35-year-old guy who's slowing down. Carlo almost got up and attacked me in the room. So apparently, Luke Schenn is going to win the Norris this year. But my point being is that's me. We're just being a little bit snide. Luke Schenn serves a purpose.
Yeah.
He's a leader who's won, fantastic person, and he knows it. He knows how to play, and he's going to add to the depth of that group. But looking at this wild card, this race out west, Winnipeg, Dallas, Minnesota. Winnipeg's got 90 points. Dallas has 84. Minnesota has 76. And where's Colorado? 76.
Yeah.
So they're crying. Yeah,
They can be right there.
Yeah. Oh, it is going to be a crazy race, and I think Dallas is playing Winnipeg next week, like early next week, and they'll be playing each other. I'm sure a few different times.
I think we're looking at Dallas, Colorado. Unless the wheels completely fall off Winnipeg.
Yeah. Well, and there's one team we haven't mentioned yet, and that's Edmonton. We'll come back and get into it where they stand now, because they were Game 7 of a Cup final last year, and now all these other teams around them in the West keep loading up and loading up. Frankie Corrado will join us. We're waiting to hear from Brad Treliving. Brad Treliving will speak with the media. They're out in Colorado ahead of the game tomorrow. When Treliving speaks, you will hear it right here on TSN Radio. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. Overdrive continues, powered by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Bryan Hayes, Jamie Noodles McLennan, Dave Feschuk, and there's Frankie Corrado joining us around the table.
What's up, boys?
Well, I would say, it was, we were over there doing Trade Center all day, and by 11 a.m., 11:30, there was nothing going on.
There was tumbleweed.
Literally nothing.
What is going on here?
And then, slowly as noon hit, a couple of deals started pouring in, and yet I would say by the end, I can't speak to volume, but the Rantanen deal, Brad Marchand on his way to Florida, the 2 trades by the Leafs, last night when you look at what Colorado's done, I would say now that the dust is settled, and it hasn't completely yet, we're still waiting on some details, this is going to be a trade center I think we're going to remember for a long time.
Yeah, it was the quality of trades versus the quantity, and that was going to be the case because of all the teams that are in the mix and the limited pool of UFA players, and a lot of guys with term got thrown around, right? Like teams were able to digest that. But I mean, if I asked you guys this morning, could you think of the perfect landing spot for Brad Marchand? I think tops on the list would have been the Florida Panthers, would it not? Imagine a line with Bennett, Tkachuk, and Marchand being out there. And what a mess
they have such an embarrassment of riches down there.
It's crazy. Yeah.
You got Barkov, you got Reinhart, you got Verhaeghe.
Don't forget though, they took swings on guys that weren't sure things. Right, that's the thing that you always have
Evan Rodriguez and
right, the Evan Rodriguez's of the world, the Gus Forsling.
The Leafs had him.
But he was honest to God, he was like a throwaway.
He was an afterthought in Toronto.
Yeah. I don't even remember the trade they acquired him in.
Did he even play? Did he get assigned a number?
I'm
did Jared
not
McLaughlin
sure he
get
did.
assigned a number?
So if you ever watch Rodriguez's pregame routine, is he goes out to the bench, he has his earpods on, and he's down to the music, and he's doing his visualization. And I remember watching him do that with the Leafs because I think I was calling a game randomly or doing something. And then I kind of tracked his progression, his career, because here it was like a throwaway at the deadline. I think they brought him in. It was a body they had to bring in, and they flushed him. They might have flushed him to the Marlies. I don't know what happened.
I'm pretty sure he ended up at some point with the Marlies.
Yeah.
And he's another guy from the Buffalo graveyard
of
players.
That's right.
Remember that?
Well,
he was Jack Eichel's line mate in college. He signed with Buffalo, and he was part of those guys that we don't talk about, right? We talk about O'Reilly, Allmark, Reinhart. Evan Rodriguez has had a real a nice little career.
Blown up and won.
That is a Netflix special. Players that have left Buffalo.
Oh. Well, now, one of the bigger deals that I didn't even mention was Dylan Cozens to Ottawa for Josh Norris.
Right.
And JBD, right? Is it?
Yeah, Jacob Bernard Docker.
Yes, so Bernard Docker, who's going to Buffalo. And that was kind of the deal that got everything going.
That kind of got
today,
the
right?
juices
That was
going,
okay, that's an interesting move. Now, from Ottawa's standpoint, I find this quite interesting because they're in the playoffs currently. Norris is a guy that they had committed to in the past. He was a part of that core that they got in front of and signed. And when he's been healthy, he's been a very productive player. But Dylan Cozens brings a bit of a different ingredient, right? He's a right-shot defenseman. He's got some size. Obviously, Buffalo wanted to flush him out because his name was out there. It's just one of those scenarios where, both teams are trading. I would have figured if you're going to put a Cozens out there or a Norris out there, you might bring in a different ingredient. But
palate cleanser.
It's just kind of one guy's 24, the other guy's 25. They both got talent, and it's you're just going to go to the other team, and hopefully your career takes off.
It's a shakeup, though.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Buffalo, they don't need more draft picks. They need live players that are in that mid-20s to move forward with the group that they have. They needed a core shakeup, and obviously Steve Staios felt that Ottawa needed a core shakeup, or you're trying to build a team to go deep into the playoffs. You're not trying to build a team to make the playoffs. Again, I'm not behind the curtain, but I was saying to the guys off air, both organizations saw something in these players. I'm sure they loved them, but, we'd like this. I think you can win a trade on both sides, because I've seen Ottawa do it this year. The Jensen for Chychrun. Both organizations love their player. You hope that both of these guys land on their feet. You wish Josh Norris well. Dylan Cozens, he's in a playoff race now. That's the difference. Buffalo's not. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on Cozens because Josh Norris, the one thing he does when he's healthy is he scores goals.
Yeah, he does.
Well, he scores goals, and he was beloved in that dressing room.
Yes.
When you see your captain almost in tears addressing his departure in a press conference, Austin Matthews called for a trade deadline boost in Toronto. This might be the pin to the balloon in Ottawa, right? Like if you lost a guy that was loved like that, Dylan Cozens, to your point, Noodles, he's got a lot of pressure on him to perform quickly.
I would love to say that I like this trade for the Buffalo Sabres, bringing in Josh Norris, but I have no idea what that looks like for the kid going there. Like, that team's not turning it around in a hurry. He's obviously had his injury issues, but he's a really good kid. Like, I played with him his first year pro, and I said this today on Trade Center on the TV side, but you know how when you're an older guy in a team, like you're on the bus, we were on the bus in the minors, but like you kind of take a little inventory on some of the young guys.
Yeah.
We would talk about this guy glowingly all the time. We're like, for a 20-year-old kid, he just gets it.
Awesome
like he
guy.
was such a dialed in pro at such a young age. And I have no doubt it's significant, but the injuries are the only thing that has held this guy back in his career.
That's what I don't get.
Surgery.
That's what I don't get from Buffalo. That's what I don't understand what Buffalo's doing. Like Josh Norris, the stats when he's playing, when he's healthy, speak for themselves. But how can you have faith? He's got a lot of term left at a decent amount of cap hit. How can you have faith he's going to be healthy? Like that's what I don't get. Like if you're trading Cozens, okay, you make that move.
Well, how
this
about
is what you land on Josh Norris.
What about from Ottawa's point of view in the sense that when Stützle, Norris, and Pinto are all in the lineup together, you would know their record.
They win.
Really good.
They play well.
Games.
Yeah, that was.
What does it look like? Cozens has to have that same effect now, or else it's like, well, we knew that when Norris and Pinto and Stützle were in the lineup, we won games. Now what?
The only thing I would say too, they've got some versatility there, is you could ask yourself if you're an Ottawa fan or an Ottawa management, is Pinto a 2? Do you think Pinto can be a 2?
Yeah.
Maybe can be, but isn't right now.
Well, but that's the thing.
He's been playing pretty well recently.
So now, my point being is you've got 3 guys that can play in 2 spots, really, and that talks to depth. So we were talking about the Laughton trade. Like, Laughton is a 3 with the Leafs, which is fine. I mean, that if you're looking at Ottawa, I think Cozens can be a really good number 2 centerman. I believe Shane Pinto can be a 2 as well. But now, it's going to go Stützle down to Cozens into Pinto or some form of that.
Yeah.
Which is gives you an opportunity.
Is there a team that sticks out for you guys where you're kind of wondering why they didn't do more, or did they get left out?
Yeah.
Like Vancouver, Brock Besser remains a Canuck. They traded Carson Soucy yesterday.
Here's what I don't understand.
What else are they doing?
Vancouver said the prices were high. Okay, great. You're not in the rental market, but why wasn't the price high for Carson Soucy? Would you get a 3rd-round pick? Mm-hmm. Like that type of defenseman got more than a 3rd-round pick. What did Luke Shen go for?
You went a 2nd and a 4.
A 2nd and a 4th.
A 2 and a
Luke
4.
Shen. Brandon Carlo was a haul. Carson Soucy is worth more than a 3rd based on this market.
Today,
Today, based on today's prices that we saw. And then the Brock Besser thing, you want to keep Brock Besser as an own rental? I have no problem with that because you're in a playoff hunt and you value playoff games. But don't, insinuate that prices were high, but they're not high for our guys. Like, if they're high for everyone. They don't care that you're a Canuck or not.
Well, and that's what I wonder. Vancouver maybe should have looked at what Boston did today, where Boston unloaded a lot of pieces. Like, they made a declaration that we're going to determine who's going to stick around, but we're going to try to bring in as many prospects and picks and retool this over the next year or two. Where Vancouver, pretty clear they still don't know exactly what direction they want to go in.
Right.
So I would agree with you when I look at Vancouver. I look at Edmonton, too. They picked up Jake Wallman last night. And Wallman, he's going to
really
play.
Good.
He's a good player, and he's going to play. And they got Frederick. But you look at what Dallas did. You look at what Colorado did. Vegas is going to be stout. Winnipeg stout. Like, what is Edmonton thinking today?
Yeah.
Like, does Edmonton – because – we came into the season, and it was a formality. Edmonton's doing what Florida did, and they're going back to a Cup final. I don't think they're a top 3 team in the West right now.
They're not a slam dunk, but I think you've got to – their players have to play better. Like, that's the thing. We're looking at it through a lens of, like, all right, they've lost 7 of 9 or whatever it is.
Well, let's say they're playing at their best. Let's say every team's playing at their best.
Is McDavid
How would you rank the
Super
West?
McDavid, or is he?
Everyone's playing at their best.
I would still think Edmonton's at the top.
You think they're better than Dallas and Colorado?
Well, how
Winnipeg?
is Dallas spread out? Like, I like Dallas's depth, but they don't have McDavid and Draisaitl on that.
Nobody does.
But that's my point.
Nobody
At least
does.
now they have
Now, Colorado's
Rantanen.
got
That's
McKinnon and McCarr, but no one's got those 2 guys.
But
know.
I think Hyman needs to play better. RNH needs to be better. McDavid needs
Skinner's
to be better.
got to be better.
Well, yes. Stuart Skinner has to be a lot better. But Ekholm has to be better. Bouchard has to be better. Like, that's the spine of their team. Not any of them are having a career year other than Draisaitl.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you, though, Noodles gone out and got a little insurance in that?
But who?
Well, I don't know. Who,
That's
but I mean,
my question.
You didn't hear any murmurs of them even
but
kicking tires. Maybe they were.
I think they were
We don't
probably
know.
looking, but like who? I guess my question is, if St. Louis was trading Binnington, that would be the only guy that I would look at and go, okay, you could probably bring in Binnington. But I don't think there's any number one available in the league that would be significantly better than Skinner.
It'd be lateral moves right now. I think if you were going to do the goalie move for Edmonton, wouldn't you have done it like around the time Colorado did theirs?
Yes.
When they went out and got Blackwood? Because like Blackwood came in and he played great right away. It's not easy for goalies to do that. Like you would know it takes a little bit of time. And then, so now you're at the point where if you make that goalie deal, it's not exactly tested and true that a goalie comes in at the deadline and has all this success right away. Like you need a little more runway than that.
The only thing I look at is they're running that back because they know what they have. That's the only thing. If you bring somebody in, you don't know. That's the only thing. You don't know if that guy can fit in. I think Stuart Skinner fits their mold the way that they want to play. And they've been playing awful defensively in front of him, so it exposes him. He hasn't been consistent. But if that's the group that they're going to go with, are they good enough? They felt that they were good enough last year. They've added Frederick. They're going to get Kane back by the sounds of it. They're just pushed him to the deadline.
They've told him he's not coming back until the playoffs.
So I just was reading the comments there from Stan Bowman. It's like they feel that they'll have Frederick and Kane in their lineup, and you add that in with Max Jones.
That's good.
Those are guys that they need. That's because Evander Kane is that top six winger that they need. They don't have that right now. They've got Podkolzin there, who's a nice heavy player, but he needs to be farther down.
He can't finish. That poor guy is a
gets a
good
million
player.
chances.
He gets so many chances. I love everything about that guy except the fact that he can't finish. You know what? Like if you were going to do something today, if you were Edmonton, it would have been like a hockey trade, like a guy in, guy out, right? Like I don't know if it's like
Arvidsson for Raquel would have been.
Well, that's what
that's the trade that would have been.
Draisaitl all year has been carrying his line mates.
Yeah,
like all year, and he's doing it in just remarkable fashion. I'm curious his thoughts after, if he's like, man, like McDavid's got RNH and Hyman, and they got to get going, they got to be better, but he's playing with guys that just aren't pulling their weight.
And
Arvidsson. Yeah.
That's the only. Their third line, I think, is set. Their fourth line, they brought in some beef. Now, is Frederick a guy that is going to get a look on that left side, or is he better suited to be probably your third or fourth line guy?
Probably a bottom six.
I would think probably Evander Kane that would be the most likely one to help if he's at 100%.
I guess outside of this, are we going to see now 2 weeks from now? Kane flying around practicing
I fully
with them?
anticipate that.
Who was it? Kucherov did. Remember Kucherov for 2 months?
He's got to get
flying around with that team.
And it goes
Matthew Tkachuk as well, right?
It's also worth noting, like Kucherov missed that whole year. He came back. He was unbelievable in the playoffs.
Special.
It's not
player,
easy to do that. Like if Evander Kane does come back, I don't think you're getting right away. At least you're not getting the Evander Kane from like 3 years ago in the playoffs. Remember that like torrid run he was on?
Yeah,
you're getting something different.
Here's why I think Dallas got markedly better just with Rantanen. Their forwards, like you basically put Rantanen in there for Stankoven. You can eat an apple off his head. Tiny little guy, but very, very talented. Very, very talented. When I look at Dallas's, the biggest thing for me is their D, the right side. Like Debushkin,
right, it's Dumba
CC, like Dumba. I circle that. That's the only thing I circle. Now
and Heiskanen's
he'll be back. But he'll be back, it sounds like.
Yeah.
But my whole thing is every team, there's not a perfectly built team. I mean, Winnipeg looks pretty damn good, like close to it.
Luke
right?
Schenn's a nice ad for them.
But
that second line, though, you still look at it as a Perfetti, Nemestikov.
Size on that second line.
They needed a presence. I think the Nelson thing, like that really hurts, especially because he's going to Colorado.
Yeah.
Because it's in the division. If Nelson went to New Jersey, okay, you can kind of wash your hands with that, but he's in your division. Now you got to play against him.
Here's why I think I'm wrong on my statement about Edmonton. Colorado's won before, and they got better today. So now you've got McKinnon, Neskash. What are we calling him? Natchez. I apologize.
But
hard. It's a hard
apparently
one.
the guys someone was saying he wants to be Netches.
I know it's just
He's
tomato,
Natchez, but he
tomato.
wants to go
Let's just say,
Netches.
hey, you're a great player, number 88 for Colorado. Nichushkin, wild card. We don't know. This guy might show up in the playoffs and do what he did the last couple playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Nelson, Coyle, like they're Drouin's there. Like they are a deep team.
Yeah.
McLennan was a good playoff guy when they won the Stanley Cup. that
He's
year.
healthy now.
Yeah.
We forgot the Drury kid. He is their fourth liner.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
But
they are a
Colorado's
deep
in a
team.
really good
they are
place.
in a very good
Overhauled their team from start to finish this
Amazing.
year. And like anyone that tells you can't do it, this and that, watch Colorado. Watch Florida. Crazy how Florida can go out and get the big name every single time. How do they get the big guy every time?
What?
Not everyone can do it.
One thing that I've noticed I don't know how you guys feel now. The teams that kind of loaded up today pushed themselves up from a group. So there's probably a 10-pack now where you probably were like, okay, I could see 16 teams felt like they're cup contenders. Now you're like 8 to 10 that have pushed themselves up into a different level.
Yeah.
Now they're going to have to play each other. And
Yes.
we'll see who ends, finishes in the
Well,
end.
that's the crazy thing, right? Is there's only one team
Mentioned
standing at the
load
end.
and Vegas isn't going anywhere. They're heavy. Colorado's not going anywhere. Dallas isn't going anywhere. Winnipeg, Edmonton. So that's 5 out west.
Yeah.
2 divisions you have to win. You have to win the Atlantic, and you have to win the Central.
Yeah.
You have to.
So Atlantic,
or you
you
are
got
in big trouble.
3 in the Atlantic, and then who in the Metro?
Well, for me, it's Washington, if you're a believer. Carolina's worse. Jersey without Jack Hughes. I don't
That's
know.
9. I'm looking at 9 without Carolina and with Jersey because I think the injuries and Carolina, I don't know what.
I would say 5 in the West, 4 in the East.
So there's 9.
A lot of them
9-pack of teams that.
That's where your Stanley Cup is likely coming
That's
from.
where maybe throw in one other team. Who knows who gets hot?
I doubt. Yeah,
I
so
don't
like
know,
LA get hot. Does
Well, LA,
Carolina get hot? I don't know.
Rangers, who knows?
Yeah.
All right. Okay,
boys.
Frankie. Well, we'll see what comes of it, man.
Yeah. It was a long day. Got a lot of hockey to watch.
Long
now.
day. Well, yeah, we got games
This
tonight,
is
right?
the thing that there should be no games tonight
No kidding.
because guys are sleeping, half sleeping. They're on their phones. Teams are disrupted. Guys are crying. It's just the pets' heads are falling off.
There's a lot going on. There's a lot, and there's a fair amount of games tonight.
Got to play tonight.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I'm curious. Like Boston's in Tampa tomorrow. Like, what is Boston possibly thinking? With Marchand out of there, Coyle out of there. Coyle's a Massachusetts guy. Coyle's been there Carlo's been there 9 years.
Yeah.
Like he's
The
not a
culture
kid.
changer there.
That's the thing. Like
That's the thing. Like that
big
disrupts the fabric in Boston, which is tough.
The end of an era.
absolutely.
But that middle stat, they did get some players. Minton step. Do you think they'll?
I think they might play him.
Probably.
I wouldn't be surprised if they. Why not give? Like he's not 18.
Right.
And he could play in their American League, but
Yeah.
that'll be an interesting one for the Leafs. Like you're tracking Fraser Minton now because he's in your division. You'll be playing him 4 or 5 times a year. Like if he turns into a player, I don't think he'll be a superstar or anything like that. But if he's just a really good second or third line center, he's going to play for a long time.
Yeah.
Saying
see him a
this
lot.
isn't Raycroft for Rask.
I don't think
No.
it's going to get to that extreme, but we'll see.
Great. I think it was a.
I think it's a smart play for both teams. I think Boston and Toronto, and the fact that Boston made moves within their division twice.
Yeah.
see
Carlo coming here and Marchand going to Florida. That's pretty
You don't
wild
see
stuff.
that 10 years ago or more. Or
Never,
anything.
man.
Wow.
Never.
You
Like,
wonder how
those
the
were-
fan base will react to that in Boston.
Those are
right?
the two
Like,
teams
that's
they played last year. Leafs in the first round, Panthers in the
There's
second.
been a lot of discontent in that fan base, man. Don Sweeney's under a lot of heat.
Yeah.
Sounds like Brad Treliving actually might be speaking with the media. Is that the plan here, Doogie? We're just waiting to see if
Setting
he's
up
going
at
to
the
come up.
Ritz in Colorado.
All right. Well, why don't we keep roundtabling here? Frank, you haven't really talked about the Leafs in general, like we've gone everywhere else. Laughton, Carlo, how big of an improvement is this today compared to yesterday for the Leafs?
I think the Carlo one is more significant, just based on the need to kind of take away some minutes from some other guys on the back end, play with Morgan Riley, like the type of game. Like they obviously signed Yanni Hakanpää for a reason, 6'7", like 200 and a million pounds.
280.
And like. So you bring in Brandon Carlo, the long reach, the body type, the physical around the net, like not going to wow you with the puck, but they value the stature of that kind of player. So that makes a lot of sense. And Scott Laughton, like Jamie said, it's a third line center every day of the week, knows exactly what he is, feistiness. Like, and one of those guys that you're going into a series against Florida or Tampa, Nick Paul or Brandon Hagel starts to punch you, or Bennett starts to punch you. Like, he's going to stand
He'll
in
punch
there.
back, too,
He's going to
yeah.
punch back. He's going to stand in there. Not going to wow you offensively, but, better than Pontus Holmberg would be offensively.
Right.
So it serves a purpose for the team.
Well, that's another good point, because we do talk about, okay, you need this offense and all that. And sure, Laughton obviously is not Alex Ovechkin, but the other option was, if you don't make the move, it's going to be Pontus Holmberg,
Right.
or it's Max Domi or Connor Dewar. Like,
You needed an upgrade.
there's something had to give where you can flush a couple pieces out. And ultimately, when it comes to goal scoring, we know the guys that have to score.
Yeah.
That's
Like, it's going to be the big guys, and Nyes and McMahon if he's healthy. Like,
you
there's
need
6 or
one
7 guys ahead of
critical
Laughton.
goal. You need one critical. You need the Stephon Matteau. You need
Exactly.
something like that.
Big moment,
But,
score a big goal.
again, Laughton is a designated center. It's not like, hey, we think we're going to try Holmberg here. We're going to try
Right.
Max Domi.
It's set.
And like,
You're right.
This guy's a centerman.
Yeah,
Matthews-
that's all he's
That's
always
it.
played.
That's all he's
Matthews,
played.
Tavares, Laughton, Camp.
That's your center.
That's going to be your
Exactly.
four
So that's
centermen.
Good.
fine.
That's
Like,
really good down
Now,
there.
he's a left shot. They're all left shot.
Me and Gio were talking about that, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
nice for the left-handed defenseman to have a righty so you can, like, zing a pass. It's a little different on the back end, but that's what you got. Jake Evans wasn't available.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's what it is.
Frankie, let me ask you this one. Writing this week about how, I made the case the Leafs needed to get a guy to play with Morgan Riley on that second pairing because, there's no highest paid defenseman in this league right now on a playoff team. And Morgan Riley is that guy at $7.5 million who is a minus 17. And that's what Morgan Riley happens to be right now at this point in the season. He's having a tough year. And I saw a lot of feedback on our website and my email and Twitter. A lot of people are saying, why is it every year it's about Morgan Riley's partner and not about Morgan Riley?
Who's his partner's been over the years, though? That's what I would say. It's like he's had so much instability there.
Yeah.
And, so many guys have tried out, and Ron Hainsey was a great fit, and Luke Shen was a great fit. And so you look at it and say he just needs a stable guy who Morgan can go up and down the ice and not have to worry about holding back and just say, like, because his instincts are good offensively. His knowing and understanding to jump in, he's good that way. So just put him with a guy who's really rock solid. And he might get that now with Brandon Carlo. He's got a better chance of getting it with Brandon Carlo than he does with OEL.
Yeah.
But that's, there is challenges with that as well. If you're not Hainsey, if you're not Shen, like, it's not easy to handle the unpredictability of a game like that, but his offensive instincts are really good for a defenseman.
The other thing, too, is just as I was talking about defined roles, like Carlo is a 4. He's not a 6 that you're asking to play 4. He
Yes.
is a right shot that plays the right side.
Right.
So you're not asking a left shot, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, to go, hey, go play
And
the
that's
right
what's
side.
happened.
Or
Ron
TJ
Hainsey
Brody. Right, that's what. So
Brody,
to me,
exactly.
it's those are actually defined roles
Yeah.
going plug and play, go play right there.
Well,
and we'll see how that works.
You hope he has a similar effect to the one that Luke Shen had with Morgan Riley, right? Like, when Shen showed up, he really stabilized the pair. They were a very good pairing down the stretch and into the playoffs. Carlo's younger than Shen. You've got him on term.
Got him for 2 more years.
You got him for 2 more years.
Yeah.
And again, I still haven't seen the exact details of the salary retention, but he's making $4.1 million, I think, Brandon Carlo.
Yeah.